to the 5th episode of the Sabia Khan Show. Today we have the founder of my favorite NFT project, Maison De Goatz, Des. Des, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That's a very, very sweet intro, and I'm very appreciative that you've been a part of our community and you value it so much. And really happy. We've been trying to get this done for, I feel like almost
Forever.
a year. Honestly, a year. So it's great to finally make it happen.
I mean, yeah, I think more than a year, and I think so much has happened in this year that has been crazy. And years like in NFT land, the amount of time, like time dilates, like it's just crazy. Welcome, Des, and thank you so much for doing this. And Goatz actually hold a very, very special place in my heart because it's one of the earliest projects which kind of welcomed me in the NFT scene, and of course, like from there it has been amazing. So how are you? Like you went, like you had a surgery. How's your foot?
Yes, I am on the mend. I've had a series, honestly, throughout this entire NFT journey. It's funny, I don't know what it is, but prior to getting into NFTs, I never had broken a bone in my body. And all of a sudden, in the last 2 years, I've had a few different surgeries, and it's just, yeah, it's been rough. And the recent one is a torn Achilles, and had surgery on that about 3 weeks ago. So currently on the mend in physical therapy for it, but it's getting better. So that's good. And then on the NFT side, we've obviously the whole market, everything has had its ups and downs. And so I feel like we're going through a recovery in NFTs as well. And Lord knows we all probably need some therapy from it. But yeah, it's been great. It's been fantastic. And I think, what you said about Goatz welcoming you in, I think a lot of people in this space kind of have a very similar story about Goatz. Just feel like we were a good community at welcoming people. Our cost to entry wasn't prohibitive. We launched around the same time frame as a lot of the early projects. And so I think a lot of people gravitated towards it and stayed for kind of that welcoming community. And so, yeah, it's always great to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, Goatz, like, I want to like dive straight into the theme of this episode because I think Goatz was like an early project, right? With only like a handful of projects launched then. And because I've like known the story before, like I think Bored Apes launched, and then a couple of other projects like Garagat Gang and stuff like that, they launched. And then I think Alien Boy also launched before Goatz, and then you launched Goatz. Yeah, right. So
yeah. That is kind of, that's the perfect time that, because I remember those launches coming out when we were prepping for our launch and thinking like, oh, another launch, and oh, it's a good project, are we gonna make it? And that's so funny that was in the early days when you used to have to worry about launching on the same day as another project. And then I remember at the height of it, there was 8 projects launching a day at one point. It's not that way anymore, but I remember at the height, there was just so many projects being launched.
It was like summer of 2021, like the prime time for NFT. July 2021, you launched with 10,000 PFPs. And also, like, I was not there when it launched, but I've heard that it was a very smooth drop, and the dev team was very strong. So my point is, like, did you always thought that, like, have you always been a person who would like, because it's kind of a, like, are you a perfectionist because you kind of learn from other projects and then you launch your own? So what's the story behind that?
It's funny.
You always wanted to like you always wanted some business, or like where were you in life when like Goatz happened?
Yeah, so a couple different things. I always say, Goatz was founded between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. Because those were the hours early on that I dedicated to working towards Goatz. My wife was pregnant at the time, and we're both night owls, so we stay up late. But when she got pregnant, she was all of a sudden going to bed at like 8 p.m. And I'm not going to go to bed at 8 p.m. So I had about 4 to 6 hours every night that I needed to do something with. And I've always been kind of a hobbyist, someone who was tinkering around. I've loved engineer. I'm an engineer by education. So I always knew I wanted to creatively kind of create stuff. And I had gotten into NFTs basically in December of 2020. I really saw kind of the value in them and the collectability, but I also did start to see the community aspect of as well. And that's what really kind of drew me to maybe create something. I had started a podcast with my friends Chamber and Bunshu called The Mint Condition in early 2021. And yeah, we would just keep seeing people come in, ask questions, want to get onboarded, create community. And so it all kind of started to make sense that I wanted to create my own kind of sense of community and project. And then I loved the technical side of it. So figuring out how to solve issues, making sure that we had a good launch and a smooth drop, as you said, was really important to me. So that part of it, I do strive for perfection. Like I like things to run smoothly. The other part of it though is I do like to experiment and try things that maybe don't equate to perfect success. I like, that old principle. It's like, if you're going to fail fast. And so you can kind of create, different pivots and do things like that. So that's kind of my philosophy is I wanted to be different than the projects that we're launching. I wanted to learn from them, but I wanted to be different in kind of our approach and what we did.
Amazing. I mean, so when you launched Goatz, right, and it was sold out in like 40 minutes or so, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, and I think what makes Goatz is a very interesting project because somehow like I have not found another project with a much, how do you call it, like a much, like a genuine community, people genuinely care about each other. And so like when it was launched, right, how did you find that community? Like how did you form that community? Because I think a lot of projects were coming out, and even like Gutta also had a good community, but in recent years we've seen the community has fallen out and stuff has not been so good there. But Goatz, I mean, I think that's my main point. Like, how did you find the community part of Goatz? Because it kind of makes this project very, very different from other. So yeah,
It's
and
yeah,
it's like an OG project, right?
yeah,
It's still
no,
there.
yeah, it's super interesting how that all happens, and especially the history that the NFT space has had. Stop. This might be a long ramble, so stop me if you want to ask questions or I got off topic. But basically, I'm a huge believer in culture, and when I'm working for just companies prior to Goatz and stuff, I always believed in corporate culture was like a really important thing to have. And so I'm a super nerd with that. I've studied a lot of different books about corporate culture and how you create that. And I think my favorite kind of quote from that was, if you're not actively pursuing the culture you want, then you run the risk of it creating itself. And so the idea behind that is I was heavily involved in the Discord early on when we were creating and building Goatz. And part of that was I was hoping that by my presence and figuring out and being very vocal, that would kind of shape the community that we wanted. And so when people came into Goatz, into the Discord, they could get a real sense of what we were about, maybe that we were a little different in certain areas, what we cared about, what our interests were. And that was kind of the foundation of the culture. Now, what's great, and it's not always automatic, but when you do that and you have that kind of early creation of it, and people jump in that are like-minded and want that same culture, then it can just build on itself. And it's not reliant on me always being in there and kind of doing that. So I think that's an important aspect, is early on, you really have to kind of set that tone and that culture. What I think is so interesting about our space is I always saw the community aspect as a really big part of this, but obviously a lot of the time it's about financial gains and things like that for people, which kind of counteract that community aspect. And then we also had this period of like, everyone needs to be inclusive to every single person, which made it really hard because you had created a lot of these communities that were, focused on A, B, or C. And then, a good thing is inclusion. I mean, inclusion is great. And something we always looked at is how do we get more, women in our project and diversify that way and things like that. But it became like a really kind of hard but good mission to kind of diversify your community, because you had built this culture, you'd built this foundation. It's almost like a club, right? I almost kind of look at these things like different clubs. And if you're, a tennis club and you're all focused on tennis, it's really hard to all of a sudden adopt, a basketball club or, a chess club. And so it was always a struggle for me as a founder, because I kept hearing these things from the community, like we need more diversity, we need more this, we need, and I just didn't quite know how to manage that, because it seemed like for a majority of our community, they were passionate about sports, they were passionate about like gambling and stuff like that. They were passionate about streetwear culture. They were like, there was like a few core things that you could pick out between our community members. And that's what kind of drove that community aspect. And I think that family aspect, like once you start having like interests and being able to talk freely about your everyday life and not just NFT stuff, that's when like the real community aspect comes to it. That's when like the family aspect comes to it. But other than that, I think the biggest thing for community is just really nice people. We just got really lucky with like really welcoming, really generous, really nice people in our community that again set that tone for like, hey, we don't talk bad about people. Like we're trying to educate, and we're trying to be friendly stewards of people who are outside the NFT space and Web3 space, and have them come into it. And so that ultimately was kind of the icing on the cake as far as how we built a functional community.
So I'm just trying to understand this, because did you start on Twitter? Like, did you announce that a project is going to be like you're gonna found a like you're developing a project, this project's gonna launch soon? Was it like on Twitter, or like did you start in other projects Discord? So like how do you get the word out?
We grew incredibly organically. So if I'm dialing it back, I think the first step was that I originally started in this space with the podcast, but the following at that point hadn't been huge, but it wasn't small. So I got a good audience from that. I had been doing a lot of data analytics for a lot of NFTs that were out there, primarily two, which at the time were the most popular. So I was doing data analytics for NBA Top Shot, and then data analytics for Zed Run horse racing. And so those two, I would, on my personal Twitter page, post like the latest.
It was like, were you helping the project, or you were like doing it on your own? Like
Completely on my own, not affiliated with the project. I had started to put out like daily content of here are the best, NFTs to buy in Top Shot, or here's the biggest decline. I'm a super data nerd in general. And then to add the visual, I would always have really nice visual charts that could easily be shared. And so I had gained like a tiny following at that time. A couple thousand Twitter followers on my personal page that were invested in NFTs. But also as a good resource. So for the people who cared about them, I was a valuable resource. And so they kind of followed me where I went. They followed me to the podcast. And then I think the first thing I did before creating a Discord was a Twitter. So I said, hey, this is coming soon. I ported people over from my personal Twitter to the company page, the Maison De Goatz page. And so that's where I started to see traffic flow. So it was all organic. We never did any advertising or anything like that. Just kind of getting the word out. And you got to remember, at that time, people were so thirsty for new things. People were actively trying to find out what is the next new project. And so I think it was a little bit easier time to garner attention than maybe it is now with all the noise. So, people naturally found us just through talking with different people. And so it was my personal Twitter, company Twitter. Then we eventually launched our Discord, then website and launch.
When you said gamblers and sports and community and family, people like Kenny and like we have some very warm people, Proddy, Bundy,
Yep.
Rope, shout out to Mama Bucks, Power Bucks, Punter, Pete, Cookie, Dylan Rosie, Papa was like, we have some amazing people. I think, Goatz got really lucky with some good people. And when he said gambling, and I think we all NFT people have some amount of I never knew. I was like, I would bet money on stuff like that, and it's addicting. And I mean, NFTs are fun. Like they used to be fun, but let's just say that NFTs were fun.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I mean, that's the other thing is I've actually liked the whole sports, the card gambling, casinos, Vegas. I've always loved that. That's just part of me and my family, and just that's way we had some fun. And but I mean, the thing is, when you invest in NFT, and at that time, yes, and still now, there is a portion that's gambling in a sense, just because you're hoping that the value go up, you invest a certain amount of money. So, I mean, yes, there is an aspect where NFTs are gambling, but I've never made friends really with the person, that I bet with at the table in Vegas. There was this whole thing that you got in addition to gambling that was so much fun. And that's the community aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, you just never make friends with people who are betting at the same table like you, and you never dump on known people, but in NFTs apparently you do.
Yeah, totally.
So,
it's very different.
I've heard heard other interviews of yours, and I got to know that you were into horses and racing horses, and you had a history of it. And that's how you got into NFTs, right?
Yeah.
With Top Shot and Zed Run.
Yep, that's exactly right. I had heard about Top Shot first, and I was in Top Shot for a month or two before I found Zed Run. And then when I saw Zed Run, I was like, oh, this is amazing, just because I had experienced personally the cost and time it takes to maintain an actual physical horse and horse racing, and all the costs that are associated with that. And so I was like, oh, if you just digitalize it, you don't have any of that overhead. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I remember I got coffee with my dad, and my dad, bless his heart, he has no idea about any of this technical stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to try to tell him about NFTs, and I'm going to do it through Zed Run. And so I remember sitting down, having coffee with him, and thinking, oh God, this is going to go horrible. He's going to call this, complete BS. And
Horseshit.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfectly. Horseshit. Yeah, it's exactly what he was going to call it. And so I was super nervous, and I remember telling him, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, this makes sense. Oh, that's great. How much do you win for winning the race?" And so he got super interested. And so I was like, "Oh man, this thing can cross barriers. If my dad can see interest and get into it and see the value of having digital assets versus physical assets, then this is good." So yeah, I remember that was a fun conversation.
It's very funny when you say that, because when I came into NFTs and I told my mom, because I was very like in the start I was like obsessed with the gutter, because I don't know, maybe I just loved the art. And I got some gutter art and from money, and like, I was like, my mom's not gonna understand this. My parents are gonna think that, I don't know, maybe I'm into like like I'm getting into some illegal stuff, because before that I used to think that crypto is illegal, like for real. Like, and then when I told them, and they were like very okay with it, they kind of understood it. And from there I kind of understood like web3 is actually gonna stay, and it's like an actual thing, people are gonna understand it. So yeah,
Mhm.
I remember telling my mom I'm gonna buy a gutter rat, and told her the cost, and she was like, no, not a gutter. I mean, at least not something which have the name gutter in it. It
Yeah,
was
that's a
very
hard sell.
funny.
Yes, that is a
Yeah,
hard. Oh man, I remember trying to onboard my family, and now at least at least two of them have an NFT, maybe even three. And so yeah, and two of them have stuck around and are active members in different things and found their own things. And so yeah, if you told me that 2 years ago that my family would own and be active in NFTs, I would have said you're crazy. I mean, that's just not possible. So it is funny to see it cross barriers. But yeah, gutter might have been a hard sell. Even Bored Ape, like, you want something that's boring, that would have might have been a hard sell initially.
it's funny that you bring up Bored Ape. Like, you said you came into NFTs in December 20. So did you get an opportunity to mint it like an early, or did you get an early?
So that was a pretty exciting day. So it was, yeah, it was like May 1st. I think it was like April 20 or April 30th or May 1st, one of those deals. And Bored Apes had launched 3 days prior to that, and not many people knew about it. And so it just sat unminted for a couple days. And it just, I can't, I no, I do remember. Okay, sorry. I remember one of the people I followed, the early NFT influencer, one of like the best people I've ever met in this space, Josh Ong. Beijing Dao is his but Josh Ong, he had just posted
Like, is
on.
he still in,
Oh
like,
yeah,
is he still on Twitter? I've never
yeah.
heard about him.
Oh, he's huge. So he's one of the pioneers, I'd say. And I think most people around that time would agree. And it's so funny. I've seen it happen. I personally did it, but I've also seen a lot of people do it at these conferences, go up to Josh and say, "Hey, you changed my life. Thank you so much." Like, literally, people go up to him all the time and say, "Hey man, you really got me into NFTs. Thank you so much." And so I had seen Josh Ong post just randomly that day in the afternoon. Um, Hey, I just got this Bored Ape. I love it. It looks so great. And I saw it and was like, ooh, this is probably some of the best art, like character art, that I've seen come out of NFTs. And I just remember thinking to myself, nothing further than that. Oh, I want one of those. Like, I just think it looks really, really cool. So yeah, I would love for that to be my PFP. And so I went on the website, and they weren't minted out. And so I was like, oh, zero point 0.08 ETH. I think at that time it was probably like $150. So I was like, it's a little more expensive. You gotta understand, I was buying, $20, $12 like Top Shop monuments. So a PFP at 0.08 was like, okay, I'll do it. And I remember it was so
Good
perfect.
times, good times.
I don't know what would have happened if this didn't happen, but I bought one, I minted one, and it was the ugliest Bored Ape that I could possibly imagine. It had like closed eyes, no clothes on, just completely plain. And I was like, shit, this is not my PFP. I'm not going to have this one. So I remember thinking, oh, okay, I'll just buy one more. Hopefully it'll be better. And so I bought it and it was awesome. It was a great one. And then from that split second moment, I was like, okay, this is addicting. I want to find the good ones. I figured if I can mint it, look at it, decide if it's good or bad. If it's bad, I'll just sell it for 0.01 ETH less than the list price. So I'll know it'll sell like that because people are buying these things. But just to get it out quickly and so I can have enough cash flow to keep buying them, I'll do it one under the price. So I did
undercutting before it was a thing.
I was undercutting the purchase price. But I didn't feel so bad about it because it wasn't sitting. It would go in very quickly. And I just didn't have the money. I didn't have the money to keep purchasing them on my own. Otherwise, that would have been the definitely right play. So I had been talking with this other guy named Cole, and we were both kind of doing the same thing. He didn't have a lot of money. And so he was doing the same thing as me, basically buying it, evaluating it, flooring it, and then going back and trying to get the rares. Cole ended up, which is crazy. Cole ended up founding Pudgy Penguins, which is,
amazing.
Amazing product now that Luke has taken over, and credit to Cole for getting it to that stage. But so I remember that feeling of just like, oh, this is so fun. And that, like you said, NFTs just were fun at that point. We had no idea that there'd be, major monetary gains associated with it. It was just fun. So yeah, I ended up, I think, minting maybe 35 to 40 Bored Apes that night. And I remember I spent all the money I had in crypto that night doing it, and it was funny.
And your wife was asleep, right?
She was kind of asleep. She was asleep, but saying, "Why the heck are you up?" Because it ran into like 2:30 in the morning. And so she called me in there at 12:30, so upset, just like, you need to come to bed. What are you doing? Why are you still up? And I said, I'm so sorry. I love you. But
I'm minting monkey pictures there.
Every minute I spend talking to you right now is a minute that I'm not spending on minting apes. And so it was so funny. She woke up, or she went to bed super mad at me. But then even by the morning, I think I had sold one for like 1 ETH at that time, which was astronomical. I mean, that's just crazy. You mint it for 0.08, sell it 6 hours later for 1 ETH. And, she understood. She understood then. But yeah, that was a crazy time. That was a crazy time.
You sold it like the same day?
I did. Yeah. It was really bad. I mean, obviously.
And you would be like, what is this thing? Like, what's happening?
Oh, I remember telling people like 2 weeks later, because I think 2 weeks later I had sold one for maybe like 3 ETH at the time, which was like $7,000. And I remember telling my friend, like, you won't believe this. Like, you won't believe this. I sold a monkey today for $7,000, and that was just that wasn't even a realm of possibility at that point. But I remember, it's one of the sales that hurt me the most looking back, is because I don't know why, but I'm always obsessed with crown traits. Like across any project, I love the crowns usually. And so I had sold a crowned Bored Ape for 1 ETH the following morning after the mint. And then, it's brutal. I know that specific one was bought at one point later on for like 140 ETH. It was pretty, it is what it is. I have a lot of those stories. But
we have short memory fans, and that's good for us in Web3, right? That's so crazy. Like, just the possibility of something happening like this, and just the possibility that because of NFTs, a person who's who's there in the Pacific time, and I'm here in the Indian Standard Time, and we're talking about animal pictures and a community forming and trades happening and like an economy forming, and it's just so crazy. I mean, it's just been 2-3 years.
It is so
Since,
crazy. I don't think if I didn't grow up in a time of popular culture where Pokemon was such a huge success and people were valuing these animals, Pokemon characters for so much money, it's one of the things that helped me rationalize that this isn't so crazy. Because from the outside looking in, you go to any person 50, 60 years old, this looks insane. This whole concept looks absolutely ridiculous. They instantly call it a scam. And so I think it's just, I think we grew up in the right time, in the right frame, that we were open to this idea. But yeah, it is a crazy concept.
absolutely. I mean, but now, I mean, FTs were so much fun. We were in a bull run, and if I'll be honest, like, because I said that I was very new to crypto, so I came into NFTs first, and then I understood crypto. It was very strange. So I never knew that when things go up, they also come down, and I kind of got all of my assets when they were like at the highest, and so now, I mean, I don't know, like, what's the future of NFTs? Like, what do you think is gonna happen? Because all the OG projects are kind of, the flows are down bad, the vibes are not that, the vibes are not that hyped, and it's just that people are kind of very iffy about stuff because everybody's trying to undercut the flows. Like, there's no good project in which people everybody's looking for exits, right?
Yeah, exits, and then I would say timed bumps, right? When people see something, they ride that wave for as short a time period now as possible, which I think is tough, and that's where it honestly becomes a little bit of gambling. And then if you're left holding the bag, it's a bad day. Where do I think they're going from here? So I'll talk in general in the NFT space, and then I'll talk about Goatz. So in general, the NFT space, I still think is going to be around. I think it'll have, more cycles of boom down the line. We're obviously economically as a world going through some issues right now. And so from a financial standpoint, the values of them might be lower, as is, a lot of things in the next, 12 to 18 months. But I do think I think that its purpose, which is to build these communities and have something that identifies you and adds to your identity, to what you are about from all aspects of life, I think is founded. And I think that is what's going to kind of remain. You look at these big companies still pouring money and resources into this, right? The biggest news of this week is that during this down market, Nike just sold $1 million worth of digital shoes. No promise of physical or anything, just straight up digital. And just, you basically get design files. So it's one of those things where I think the proof of concept from this last bull run is there. I think culturally it'll be ingrained in what we do. I think, people are looking into applications for ticketing, like music and airlines. And I think that actually makes a whole lot of sense. You look at that, and if that can get optimized, that would make a whole lot of sense. I think NFTs are here to stay. As far as value goes, I say you're going to go through a pretty tough 12 to 18 months with a few exceptions. But then I do think long-term wise, we'll have a boom. We'll have another boom. We had crypto boom in 2017 and the drop off after that, rise back in 2021, 2020. I think you're going to go through another. I think it's crazy to think you're not going to go through another boom cycle in the next five years. I just
So
that doesn't
the
make sense.
projects like Cat, Alien Boy, even Goats, Lazy Lions, Cool Cats, so Pudgy Penguins. Pudgy Penguins are still like they're doing good,
Yeah, they're doing
but
good.
yeah. So even these OG projects are also gonna like because I don't know, madam, because people they kind of they want to invest in newer projects.
Yeah.
So of course the community of the existing projects stays, but what do you think, like when newer people are going to come into the space, would they want to invest in the OG projects? Are their floor prices also going to go up, or it's like
I
a
think when you look at that, and that was always what everyone said, right? This is like the internet boom, the .com boom. 99 will fail, one will make it. I think you have a little bit of difference in this industry just because you have that cultural history of being an OG project. Like punks by themselves are nothing special, right? They didn't have a ton of utility. They didn't have a whole lot behind them. Larva Labs was working on other things, but the cultural historical value of a punk, which was, you know, the OG of OG collections, was so high. And you're going to have that with this 2021 boom. It's just the amount of projects that will be labeled as a punk of 2020 and 2021 is so small, right? I mean, honestly, you'll probably think about Bored Apes. I'm not sure about Gutter if that would be considered like historically relevant. It might be. It's like so borderline. I think Cool Cats maybe, just because I remember the buzz, but there's just so few projects that would be labeled as truly cult, even though they're OG, would be labeled as culturally historically relevant.
significant. Yeah.
Yes. So I think those probably stay in value and go up. But it's interesting, you know, what do the Alien Boys, the Goats, the you know, the Bulls on, I'm going to name some OG projects that maybe have Bulls on the Block, Wicked Craniums. Like these are all OG projects launched in that time frame. But you know, values have gone down quite a bit. Where do those fit in? I think they keep their small communities that have stayed intact right now. Currently for Goats, where we're heading is I'm trying to do right by the community that has stayed with us. So we still have a treasury, we still have a fund to deploy for different initiatives, giveaways, all that stuff. I just want to make sure at this point that I'm responsibly allocating those resources based on where the community wants. There's a long list of things that I would want to do from a development side, from an optimization side, from a marketing side. But at this point, with the direction it is, I just want to make sure that that is also important to the community. So by allowing them some voting power and helping me decide where to deploy that capital, I feel a lot better about that. Because worst case scenario, right? Goats, it'll never cease to exist, because that's the nice thing, is it'll always be there. But you know, say we run out of money, say we completely run out of money, and we've used up all our treasury. I just want to make sure that it is in a place that the community is happy with, feels that they got value out of, and that has a chance to move on forward. That's like worst case scenario. That's what I want to happen. Is I want to set it up in a place that it can continue to live and be important to those who still find it important. And then the providing value thing is a really big deal for me. You know, I think there's been a couple of spaces that talked about Goats, and it's been really nice to hear. Some of the holders have come out and said, you know, if Goats didn't exist tomorrow, I still would have felt like I got value from it. Even though my value of the NFT may have dropped, the amount of entertainment I've got, the community aspect, the in real life events, the giveaways that have turned into more valuable NFTs, like they've gotten something from it, which is something that I don't think that, you know, they can say about every project they even invested in. So I just, yeah, at this point, I really, with the money and the resources we do still have, I want to make sure that it's appropriately given to the community.
Yeah, when you say IRL events and giveaways and community meeting for poker, chess, just community members having Zoom calls and stuff like that. I mean, that's why I gravitated towards gold, because I don't know, I'm just a utility person. Like when PFP should do something, right? Like, of course, like the art is amazing and everything, but when you garner a community, you kind of give them stuff to do. So talking about IRL events, you've met other goats and a couple of times. Like how do you feel when you meet somebody like you've just known them from their PFPs and just voices on spaces, and then you just meet them? Like,
yeah, we spent so much time together in Discords and on spaces and all that stuff that you really do feel like someone. Like in internet relationships, like that is a real thing of the 21st century, is like, you can have a connection with a person just digitally, right, without meeting. However, though, it makes such a big deal meeting in person. I remember, oh man, I was totally fine, ready for my first trip to NFT NYC, very, very excited. And then I remember my walk from my hotel to the place that we were going to have our Goatz meetup. I don't think I have ever felt that nervous in my entire life. And I'm not a person that gets stage fright or anything like that. But the walk from my hotel to that place I met the Goatz, I was just so nervous. I could, they had met me digitally a million times, but at the same time, I was just like, oh man, what if they don't think I'm the founder that they want? Like, it was so crazy how nervous I got. But then of course, once meeting them after 5 minutes, you fall back into, it's like family, you fall back into a rhythm, and you get very comfortable very quickly. But yeah, I mean, it's been one of the best things in this whole space is these in real life meetups. I know being India Standard Time, you probably haven't gotten to enjoy as much of that as you'd probably like.
I miss everything. Like,
But
yeah, but
it is such a great part. You can absolutely have the experience that you want without it, but I think it has been one of the more enjoyable things is getting to do those meetups. The time we shot the music video down in Tampa, Florida, that was such a funny, surreal, just amazing time. Looking
that
back,
video has, I think, more than 1 million views, and maybe I alone have watched it like 100 times. And like, why were there we the goats? I mean, I think that's amazing. Everybody looks so good. It's so well shot. The
but
music
it
is
was incredible.
amazing.
It was incredibly well done for a bunch of young people to pull that off. It was just a blast, and it was fun. And then every NFT NYC after that has been great. And that's part of the thing that's on the table is like, do we want to have more in real life events? Just because they obviously cost money, but they also exclude some members like yourself, which just can't participate. So it's one of those things that I just want to leave up to the community. And I think it's a balance. I don't think all your resources should be done to in real life events if only a small group can utilize that. But maybe a small portion gets allocated to it. But yeah, I love in real life meetups. They've been phenomenal.
And we could like meet virtually, because so what happened with the sandbox thing? Because we got a 6x6 plot, right? And Goatz was so yeah, like what's the update on that?
So early on, that was one of our biggest kind of selling points is we had seen that probably the fastest growing metaverse play was Sandbox. It was a lot of what people talked about. Decentraland exists, but it was all focused on Sandbox. And so early on, I wanted this community have a digital place to hang out. And that for me was the metaverse, and that was Sandbox. And the idea there was that we would create like a clubhouse similar to the Maison De Goatz within that. And then, we would create these houses for every single goat that got forged. And so we had our design team create this really awesome clubhouse, really awesome different houses that you could select and be your goats. And then we were going to buy this whole big plot of land, and it's a huge plot of land, like, because each digital land has an actual real life measurement. And it's massive. Now I can't even remember what it was, but I mean, it's so big. 6x6 is so big. And that was one of our early initiatives. As soon as we minted out, got some funds, we deployed some of that capital to buying that land. And we still own it to this day. Now, Sandbox, I think I could argue it's one of the bigger scams. I would argue it's one of the bigger scams in this entire industry. Okay. All
I
that
was
land.
so excited for the house and the metaverse that I never wanted to forge my goat but I was like, I have to because I want a house. Like, where's my goat gonna live? And then I forged it, and yeah, it was sad. I don't like forging goats. Like, of course, I kind of understand that personalization and like designing your own PFP, like goats, like that's the USP of goats, and you love that, right? And people come out with like very, very creative forged goats, like, and the community members have come up with beautiful forging, but I don't like forging. Like, it just hurts my heart to have burn a goat.
You're not alone in that. And I think, I think that's the beauty of it, is you can choose to, or you can choose not to. It's not, necessary by any means. But yeah, it's, man, I just wish that worked out. That's like one of my, not regrets, but I just wish that worked out, because we had everything in place for it to be great, and Sandbox just couldn't scale and couldn't deliver on what they originally promised. I mean, we're 2 years later from when they originally thought they were going to launch an open platform to the world, and we're still doing these weird like little side alphas. So it's one of the sadder things. We still own the land. That's another thing that got brought up in a space recently, is do we want to, as a community, sell that land, which is worth a good amount of money, and put it into the treasury? I'm completely open to that if that's what the community decided, or a new initiative. But again, I wouldn't, at this point, I would not feel comfortable making that decision without having complete community buy-in on what to do with it. But that's a point, is that we hold these assets. In addition to Sandbox, we have some NFT worlds, we have some Decentraland estates, we have a bunch of different metaverse plays that are all available to us, but also available to sell as a community and put into the treasury. So it's not a bad thing to have a bunch of different assets.
Yeah, because I remember like in the initial plans, the kids also like they were going to have a sort of, what do you call it, an adventure sort of a place. Yeah, and then you could use like your token Gmilk, and then you would enjoy in there. If that would have happened, I think we all would have enjoyed our assets a bit more.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's one of the ones I actually still honestly would like to propose we go back to. The original build for that was NFT Worlds. So NFT Worlds was supposed to be that adventure land. That too also had its stumbles. They got basically told to cease and desist by Microsoft, which is a big deal. Our developer rugged us on that one, which was like so brutal. I can't even tell you. So yeah, that was supposed to be our Adventureland. Now that NFT Worlds has spun off and done their own thing and are doing it by the book, it'd be something interesting to see if we'd want to go back and do that. It's tough. A lot of people got excited about gaming early on in like the metaverse. Yeah. And now looking back, I'm curious, was that just like the buzz topic back then to get excited about, so that the value of your NFT increased? Like, all NFT projects that were investing in gaming saw an increase during that time? was it because of the excitement about the gaming, or was it excitement about the value that was given to the project because they invested in gaming? I look at our community now and I kind of wonder to myself, hey, what percentage of the community that's still active would
I
actually
want
go?
a game.
I
Yeah,
love it.
I would.
Love it.
Because like how exciting would that be? Because I love my goat, like my
Yeah.
OG goat Tex Khan. So the diamond drill cowboy, I want to play with it. Like, I want to be that cowboy, like the goat, and then I want to play a game with it. And
Sure.
I mean that would just give me so much joy. Just and not even like, and even if I just win in like the game money,
Mhm.
that would still bring me joy. Like even
Sure.
if it's like not worth any real money, I mean that would be amazing. Because of course, like the main point is like how many people are going to play the game, because how many people are going to take out their time to play a game, which is, but I think if somebody's kind of attached to their PSP, they would want to play a game. Like, and if we could like come up with like multiple games, that would be amazing. So gamification is definitely something I am interested in.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
I think a lot of
I think it depends on what type of gamification, right?
yeah.
I think like fun, simple games. Like I've actually liked what like Cool Cats has done, and but yeah, cool. No, I love getting that feedback. I think that's the beauty of where we're at now. Is I want our community to voice what they want, and I want to make it a decision. And yeah.
Can I
So
make one more ask
yes, of
of
course.
this? I love trading cards. Like, if we could have something like something physical
Yeah.
with our PFPs, and like just play like simple games. Like we used to play with WWE cards, right? And Pokemon cards and stuff like that. I mean, just that collecting just those cards, that like I would not mind like paying for those cards and plus shipping. I mean, those cards would be amazing. With I think the community, because and I would not do that for like any other project. I would not do that for Gutter. I'm really sorry. I am still a big fan of Gutter, but
Yeah.
the thing is that with Goats, it's very different, right? And like a lot of us in the community, we are very attached to our specific like one or two or three goats and kids, and like the combinations and stuff like that. So a game theory with physical cards, that would also be very awesome. I would love to collect.
Nice. I love it. I share that same passion. So that's amazing. Yeah, that's interesting. It's something I've never thought about. I've thought about digital cards and like creating a digital game based on the goats you hold and things like that. But I've never actually thought of physical trading card or physical trading card game. So that's interesting.
And also like I got cards from VFriends series 2.
Yeah.
I haven't opened them. But like because of course like I got married and I got to another place and stuff like that. But as soon as I want to go home, I want to play with them. Like I'm 28 and I just want to play with physical cards. And
I love it.
what are you gonna do when the market is down? Like play with your favorite PFPs.
Yeah,
Right.
I love it.
So yeah, like rounding the entire podcast, I would like to okay, I have just 2 questions. I'm going to be very fast with it. So like, do you feel the flow pressure from the community, or like as a founder, do you feel that pressure? Because I mean, I don't know, like there are some members like me, like who do not look at the flow, but then there are going to be some people who are going to come and ask questions about the flow. So
yes, I do and I don't. I think I don't, in the sense that the community has been really understanding, kind, compassionate, just all around great about that. Even during the highs and lows, even during the boom times, they were always never a community that was like, why is our forward price this? But we need to get it X% higher. They've just never been that type of community. And I think that goes back to the culture we created. But in the same sense, I've always felt the pressure of that, just because I know that people put their money into Goatz and want to get something out of it. So no, I do in that sense. And I've always told people, you know, I wanted to grow organically, because the last thing I wanted to happen was it to artificially inflate to, you know, a large amount. People buy in then thinking that it's on the rise, and then they get absolutely wrecked on the way down. That's just something that always never sat well with me. I never wanted to be that type of project. And so I made that very clear early on. So I hopefully that, you know, allowed the right people to get in the project and stay in, and maybe for those who saw that early on signal from me and were like, no, I was just in it to get the money, I think those people got a chance to get out. And so, yeah, it's something that I always will feel pressure about, but the community has been great about it.
Yeah, perfectly makes sense, because we had like a lot of opportunities to get out. And I think the project is gonna be here. So I'm just waiting for the next cycle to kind of see
Sure.
how all these OG projects kind of, do they go up or do they stay there? They do they, like, it's all an experiment, of course. Like, we are in NFTs, it's like a wild west, still like we are in a wild west. We don't know what's gonna happen. So just like a rapid fire round, right? Like, so what's your like favorite goat trait?
For me, I think it's got to be the astronaut. But I will say a very close second is the ethereal fur. I think we just nailed it on that one. I think it's one of the best like color furs in the game. So I think, yeah, I think ethereal fur or astronaut, maybe those two combined.
Nice choice. I like devs and cowboys. So yeah. So what's the worst project you've invested? Like, what's the stupidest project?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many. There's, I think the one I'm like most upset about, I think, is like this thing called Frenzies, which is probably like, me and my friend found them. They were like talked about, their founders were talked about nicely by Pharrell. Like, they had just all this, like, I don't know, they seemed to be legit, but then they were so bad, dropped the absolute worst art, I think, across any reveal I've ever seen in this space. Probably the worst. I can't really
Like,
think.
did you ever invest in like Solana projects?
No, never. Well, the first Solana project I ever invested in was DeGods and Utes, and that was very late in the game. So no, I didn't.
Yeah, like you're not that stupid like me, because
No, no,
Solana
no.
projects are the worst. Solana projects are the worst. I mean, Cardano, like I really met like good people from Cardano projects, and like I kind of hold them because like they're like good community, good people. But Solana people are the worst. Like one of a project, there was a project called Girlfriends, and they had like good art. Like, and I wanted like that art to be my PFP, and I bought them, and then they were doing some airdrop or something like that, and I went into the Discord and I said that you should do an airdrop to all the people, like not just like selected group. And they just blocked me, and they just banned me, and they just bashed me. I was like,
Oh,
that's so rude. And Solana people are just
good.
stupid.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, hard times. So who's your best friend in NFTs?
My best, I mean, God, that's probably an impossible question. I'll just go. Wow, that's an impossible question. I'll just give it to my co-host. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have the mint condition, I don't know how much further I would have gotten in this space. I think they were like the catalyst and the thing that kept me going. And honestly, yeah, I don't think I would have kind of lasted or even probably done Goatz if they didn't give me that support and just give me that. So I'll give it a tie to Bunchu and Chamber. I guess maybe a little bit more towards Bunchu since I've actually gotten to meet him in real life and I can confirm that he's not an AI generated robot. So yeah, maybe Bunchu.
Okay. So like, did you invest in any meme coin lately?
I'm not. I've always been very open. I'm not a meme coin person. And even though that's probably a mistake of mine, since I've probably known about stuff early on before and just not acted, it's not my cup of tea. So no.
I don't know. Like, I just have to try everything. That
Yeah.
is the thing about me. I've lost money on the stupidest meme coins. Harold, Dollar, OXT. They're just a bunch. So if not, like you did not buy Dollar Peep, like Peep coin. You did not. So like, what are you doing nowadays? Like, do you mint anything? Do you buy anything, or just like
I don't.
like with your personal funds?
I really don't. Unless it's something that I come across on my Twitter that I just genuinely like for either the aesthetics or like their mission / kind of utility or anything like that. I really don't. I
Last
mint.
thing you minted? Like, what
Last
was
thing.
the last thing?
Let's look it up. The last thing I minted. Gosh, what? I'm just so curious what this is going to be. Okay. Activity. Here we go. So the last thing I minted was, geez, I have to go back for quite a while for this. Man, truly minted was, Jesus. I mean, I bought stuff, but actually minted, I think the last thing was probably a Ute, which is crazy. It was a while ago.
Good choice.
Yeah. I think the last thing I minted was a Ute. Yeah, wow. That is what it is.
Crazy. So we are at like the 15th, fourth season, right? For the Goatz. Like, what's like, what are your future plans for Goatz? Like, do you have anything interesting which is like coming up in 1 or 2 months? Like, is there something new? Like,
So we have our
also
2-year.
like sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to ask, like, because we're all talking about AI so much, right? Like, you're living in a world where everybody's like talking about Chat GPT and Mid Journey and all these AI stuff. So like, are we also incorporating any of this in Goatz?
We haven't really incorporated too much AI. The only thing I would say is for a lot of our story and lore generation, we are using an AI platform. So that'll be coming out pretty soon. We're going to be using this new platform by Tally Labs called Avenue to help kind of craft that and create storylines within the Goatz community. And that's all using an AI engine. So that's being used. The 2-year anniversary is coming up on July 8th, and so we're we'll be hopefully gearing up to launch a few things around that time frame, and then we're going to continue the Forge. I've been pretty vocal about this. That'll, even though some choose not to do it, which is totally fine. We're always going to have it, and so future Forges and Forge prizes and things like that will definitely be available.
All right. Just last question. And it's a personal question because I kind of missed the whole Jenkins licensing Goatz and everything. How do we do that now? Like, is there any possibility of
Oh, definitely. Something that we've wanted to do is kind of try to give out as many of those licensing passes as possible. But to be honest, the easiest way, even if you don't want to invest in a Jenkins NFT token, you can just go into their Discord and say, hey, I got this goat. It's been my goat for, you know, a year plus, and it means a lot to me. You know, I have this connection with it, and they're more than likely one of the people in there has many licensing passes that they have not used and will allow you to license that goat with it. So I know many community members have done that from Goatz. So you just got to go to Jenkins Discord and kind of plead your case on why your goat should be licensed, and they'll provide the NFT and do it. So yeah,
I'm gonna try that. Like,
yeah.
why not?
You're absolutely more than personable enough to be able to do that, and I'm sure they'd really connect with your story and what you're trying to do, and just even doing this podcast, and they're all about it.
Yeah, I actually wanna, but so because Goats like own their own IP rights, and I definitely wanna do cool things with TextCon, and I'm just gonna come up with like I'm working on a comic with TextCon and his kid T-Rex. So it's just a personal project because I love them, and I kind of they are very cool. So I'm gonna come up with that just and yeah, I'm gonna try to license TextCon. Let's see if he's selected for it. And that's about it. Thank you so much, Des. It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. You know, you're as wonderful talking to you today as you have been the past couple of years in the Goatz community. And so I'm very happy to have been able to do this. And I just wish you the best of luck and success with all the future guests you get in your podcast. And yeah, just it's been great. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And recover soon, get well soon.
Thank you.
Take absolute care of yourself. Thank you so much.